That's the theory, anyway. Hello, and to everyone who's watching, thank you for joining us. To all my participants, thank you for showing up and for agreeing to speak with me. My name's Andrea Thompson. I am the founder and director of the Film Girl Film Festival, and I am here now fortunate enough to be here now with 7 incredible ladies. Once again, thank you. And I want to start. All of you are making an impact in your communities in very, very diverse and different ways. So I'm going to go around and ask you all to introduce yourselves and, what you do, because yeah, you ladies could do that a lot better than me at this point. Kara, why don't you go first?
Hi, I'm Kara Ogburn. I am artistic director at Milwaukee Film, which in addition to presenting the Milwaukee Film Festival is doing programming year-round. Normally we'd be at a cinema, but right now we're doing programming virtually, as well as education programs for young folks and filmmakers in the Milwaukee area.
And Dominique?
Good evening. I'm Dominique Samari. I'm a partner at P3 Development Group. We are a local boutique consulting firm, and we support organizations, corporations, nonprofits, and government who are seeking to drive equitable and inclusive change. Our work really focuses on strategy development, program design and implementation, qualitative research and training, and coaching. The work looks a bunch of different ways, but at the core of our work is equity and inclusion. I'm also the creator of the Belonging Project, which was a curiosity project that explored over the course of a year how Milwaukeeans create a sense of belonging for themselves and others in such a segregated city, and the creator of Kin, a digital platform that's going to launch in the spring that connects people across real and perceived differences.
See, this is why I asked everybody to introduce themselves. Next, Shalina.
My name is Shalina S. Ali. I am the co-executive director of True School, Milwaukee Center for Transformative Creative Arts and Hip Hop Culture. I'm also the co-creator of Circulate MKE, a local creative market, a mother, an artist, and I just want to wish everybody a happy International Women's Day.
Thank you. And Solana?
Hi, my name is Solana Patterson Ramos. I am currently the outreach community director for MKE Black, which is an organization that focuses on Black-owned businesses to help them with marketing, help them with whatever they need, and also with people that are wanting to be entrepreneurs and just connecting them with different types of resources. Aside from that, I'm also just basically a community organizer. Wherever I'm needed, I kind of go, as well as doing digital marketing, graphic designing, Facebook, whatever is needed for a lot of local nonprofits and political campaigns. And then I do a lot of stuff on the partisan side of politics here in Milwaukee.
Excellent, excellent. And Ania?
Looks like she's coming back.
Yeah, it looks like. Elle, why don't you go first then while we sort all that out? Elle?
Okay, hi. My name
sorry,
is
never mind. Sorry. Go ahead, Ania.
My name is Ania, and I work with Brave Green Wave Tribe, Priceless Insight, and then I also just recently launched my own business called Enchanted Work. I guess a lot of my work centers around community and just uplifting just genuine energy in the community. And so housing stability, food security. I've also worked with Milwaukee Good Food Bus, working to help create sustainable fresh food access. I'm also on the Fresh Food Council as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And Elle, please.
Thank you. I had a video playing in the background. I am El Halo. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the Inclusion Health Program Specialist for Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin. where we've started a statewide gender affirming care service program this past fall. And I am the community co-chair elect of SAPG of Wisconsin, which is the statewide action planning group for HIV and AIDS of Wisconsin. And I'm a board member at Diverse and Resilient. And right now, we're in the middle of planning our Black Trans Visibility Celebration March. Y'all can see my comment. I don't know, can y'all see that too? But that's my link for our comment, since it's shamelessly plugging itself. And we would love to have y'all come join myself and other local Milwaukee Black trans leaders and speakers, all of our speakers, and our friends and family, and come out and celebrate with us March 27th. And I would love to see y'all all there. And we are having a week of events online and virtually. So that's the hat I'm wearing right now.
Right now. And yes, excellent. And no worries. Like if I'm here to do anything, it's to shamelessly plug your project. So yeah, feel free to plug away. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Dima. And yeah, I think we're all gonna take care to say the doctor part.
Hi, my name is Dima Adel. I'm a pulmonary critical care and sleep physician in the Milwaukee area with Columbia St. Mary's system. I'm a board member with the Milwaukee Muslim Women Coalition, which is a group of women that focus on making sure the right understanding of the religion and the faith in the community, involving the Muslim community in our bigger Milwaukee community, and basically advocating for women and empowering women and young girls in our community. I'm also a mother of two.
Wow. All right, ladies, never fear. You both made me feel grossly inadequate. So I want to get on to the next question. And that is, what got you into your chosen field, and what would you say drives your activism most? And Dr. Dima, I'd like to start with you because you come from kind of a non-activist background more.
Correct. Being part of a community as a person is different than being a mother raising your children in that community. So you might start being more focused on your own little goals, but when you have your offsprings living in that community, the community means a lot to you, and it become more invested. You're branching in that garden, and you want the right atmosphere, the right environment for your offsprings to grow and have a good future. You want them to be understood. You don't want them to be singled out or bullied in their community. You want them to be comfortable in their own skin. So that actually was a big reason why I felt like I have to. It's not a choice. I have to. Being from a minority group in a community that does not always look with a smile at people of different backgrounds, wanting my children to have a nice future because this is their country, this is where they're building their future. I have to be active in making their life, their future better.
Definitely. Yeah. Mothers are kind of the ultimate go-getters, in my experience. So Elle, same question, please.
I think for me, what has become an advocacy career in community organizing, it started really just as self-advocacy, self-awareness, like having my own self-awareness, building that, trusting that, following it, and standing in like our prevention spaces and our HIV and STI educational spaces, both as an educator, but also as a young Black trans woman, and having an identity that a few years ago when I started this work was even less visible than it is now. But I also like to think and relate like the organizational service that I'm able to have in this season is really stuff that's all based in things from my youth and from my high school journey and as a student, and just volunteering and coming to learn different parts of our community in that way. And so definitely like the work I'm able to do now was all informed by having that foundation, and having like-minded people and people that are interested in community health and wealth and stability, and also having great women leaders in my life and in my work career, from my youth work career to
Mm-hmm.
to now as an advocate. So, and my mom. There you go.
Another inspirational mother's moment. Solana, same question, please.
I think it was like, I just kind of was raised thinking that's what you had to do. My mother was in the Black Student Union when she was younger, in the student government, and I kind of like, once I went to college, that's just what I did. Even before college, we had some financial difficulties, and but even when we had financial difficulties and used the services that were there, we also volunteered at those places. So we might go to a soup kitchen, and then we also volunteered at the soup kitchen. And it didn't matter like what we needed, we still would help people that might still need our help. It's not about money. It was about what you're able to do, what you can do. And if something is, basically, if you see an injustice or you see someone needs help, that's what you do. And that's kind of what I was raised in. And then it just kind of continued from there. And I learned more and more as I went along about how much it is needed to have your story as part of the narrative, and making sure that you get into spaces that they don't want you in, to make sure that everyone is talked about. So that's kind of just where I'm at, is like, we have to get in these spaces. The only way we can change things is if we get into spaces. So it kind of just keeps pushing me along.
Thank you. And Ania?
I would have to say, like, it's probably really cliche at this point if you know me, but my mom has always been my inspiration, especially when it comes to the community piece more than anything, making sure that my community, the people that rely on me and I rely on them, they're living thriving lives. My mom was really big on like making sure that if there was neighborhood kids around, or if there was kids that I grew up with, people that were at my schools or any of the groups that I was in, my mom always adopted them as one of her own. And I know that typically is a thing for like community moms. And shout out to all the community moms, because y'all really show up for youth when they need it. And I know the impact of it just because I've seen and witnessed the changes in my own friends and stuff when they've been around the community moms, my own mother. And so, yeah, it definitely helped. And I can see how even now, like, even though we have like conversations about a lot of like the trauma and, just like things that happened when we were younger and I was younger that, may have impacted me negatively, it still is good to be able to sit back and have those conversations with my mom, because long story short, like, that her being accountable, her being in a space to continue to fight the good fight, even though, she is going through whatever the case may be. Like, it's always refreshing to know that there's always people out there willing to fight without, letting anything get in the way of that.
Thank you. And Shalina?
Shout out to Anika. I get to be part of that community mom group. I really appreciate that. And I especially appreciate that because I even like to pay homage to people who have really helped cultivate myself in this role. I think when you're a nurturer by nature, you will be called to serve regardless of what that capacity is. Sometimes it looks like visible in the way that we are. And sometimes you just kind of take care of your home and yourself and your, a community without a public platform. So you're right. Ania, big ups to all the community mothers, whether you are doing a panel or you're just at home taking care of business. It's big. And on that note, I have to say, send love about my mother, Elsa, and Sarah Noble, who was huge in my life. And I'm going to go back to say that I started with myself. Like, what were my needs? And also, you know, what were my deficits, perceived deficits, and where did they actually come from? And then, you know, my family, my community, and things like that. And then when we did feel without, or we felt like we had need, who did we express that to? And then when we did express that, like, who would care enough to make change? We're in a exceptional time in life where you see a group of women like you're looking at right now in position to have impact and influence. And there are people that really paved the road for us. There was a time where, you know, you would have 1, 2 certain people that were carrying the world on their shoulders. And right now we have the awesome opportunity of having a community, which is each other. And so, you know, in this role, you know, I'm blessed to know who I am. I'm blessed to recognize my calling. And then I'm blessed to have people who have supported me along the way. And I'm ready to pay that forward.
Thank you once again. And Dominique, what got you into your chosen field and what drives your activism?
So I have, from a very young age, had really strong values around justice and fairness. I'm a recovering attorney, so I spent the first decade or so of my life practicing criminal law. And that is what drew me into that space, were really deep values that were born out of my own childhood experience. And as a transplant to Milwaukee, I think it's hard to be in this community in particular as a person of color and not feel compelled to lend yourself to service, right? Like the disparities are so significant that I just don't know many people of color that are not in some way, whether to Shalina's point that they're community mothers or they're at the church or they are not like pouring into the community day in and day out. So I do think that, you know, people have a heart, of course, for service, but I also think this time and place that we're in lends itself to people really stepping up and serving.
Definitely. And Kara, last but not least.
I love that I'm a recovering attorney. I'm an aspiring recovering attorney. Like I keep wondering, is this the year I decide to go to law school? I don't know. I think I don't define what I do as activism, and maybe that's not a good way of thinking about or looking at it. I think of what I do as kind of a co-conspirator, if that makes sense. You know, really came to what I'm doing now through education, both at first at the college level, and then within the org, and thinking about sort of creating spaces for conversations, but also for openings that can be empathetic. Film, as I've come to learn, because I do not have a background in like film studies, I don't consider myself a movie nerd, but film does have that ability to kind of create an empathetic opening. You're stuck, ideally in a cinema, in the dark with all your senses wrapped up in somebody else. It may be somebody who you see yourself in. It may be someone who you don't see yourself in. It may be somebody who isn't even a somebody. It might be a fantastical sort of a mythical creature, but you spend that time there and you leave open and having sort of co-experience something both with whoever's in the cinema with you and whoever or whatever you experienced on screen. And that empathetic opening, I endeavor to sort of wedge open for just a little longer, as kind of an opportunity for something, learning. When Elle was talking about like that being a student place, I was like, yeah, but the kind of student who's also a teacher and the kind of teacher who's also a student. And that, you know, kind of speaks to me as well. Also just everyone should mom, everyone else all the time. I'm going to take a moment to remind us all we should hydrate. As some of my community moms of me as an adult.
You just made me thirsty. I'm drinking water now. Thank you all. And, you know, now shout out to my mom as well. She really put the work in. She was a single mom for a while. So yes, I want to also shout her out, and she took care to like nurture my imagination and everything. So yeah, normally I try and make it this not about me, but you ladies are inspiring. And next up, I want to change up the order for my next question a little bit. And it is, I'd like all of your opinions on what you think are the main area or areas that Milwaukee needs to prioritize when implementing change. And you know what, Solana, why don't we start with you first? Main area or areas you think Milwaukee needs to prioritize implementing positive change.
Man, there's a list.
Yeah, that's why I only asked for area or areas. Because yeah, otherwise it would be quite a list. Let's face it.
I mean, if we don't tackle poverty, there's just nothing else we can do. Like if we don't tackle the effects of poverty, if we don't tackle that bubble, we're not going to tackle other things. And so we know that even the violence that we see in Milwaukee is rooted in the poverty. So everything is rooted there. So if we need to raise the minimum wage, we need to come up with equitable systems to help with jobs. We need to keep employees accountable and making sure they hire people from Milwaukee. We need to tackle places that are probably racist and not hiring people from Milwaukee. We need to tackle a lot of these things that end up leading to poverty and then ends up leading to other things. If we can't really tackle the other things until we tackle why kids are hungry or why people feel like leaving Milwaukee, right? We're having a huge brain drain. And a lot of that has to do with the resources that we have here, the fact that people don't know about the resources here, and the fact that there's a lot of gatekeeping to those resources, right? And so we just need to figure out how to make sure that Milwaukee is being equitable, that Milwaukee is a resource thriving place, but that everyone knows of it. And then we can't just have a program that only takes 1,000 kids out of the entire Milwaukee that helps them. We have like a billion freaking programs that only helps 10% of everybody in Milwaukee. I want a program that takes the city should be in charge of this, is to take a whole block and takes a whole area and helps the entire area, the mom, the dad, the kids, everyone, right? We can't keep, doing all these other programs, but we have so many times that we're focused on one program. We're like, look, the news is like, look, let's look at this. It's helping so many people. And it's like, but it just doesn't help everyone. So we have to have a holistic approach to what we're going to be doing in Milwaukee if we want Milwaukee to thrive.
Definitely. Ania, can we hear from you next? Main area you think Milwaukee needs to create change? And
yes, I appreciate following up my Sid right there, because yes, I believe housing and food insecurity is definitely major. And just to piggyback off of what Solana said, like I feel like there's gatekeeping, there's a sense of just like we need to make sure that people know that the resources are there in the community, and we need to make sure that we like the holistic approach, as in like this may not be a program exactly for you, but there's another program over here that doesn't do the exact same thing but meets your needs exactly, like because it fits you, your identity or whatever your situation. Holistic in that sense, because for me personally, when I was homeless, I got my place in November. This past November, I was homeless for over a year, and thank you. And in that process, it was 4 months on a waiting list to be applied to all of these general applications, but that was through Pathfinder. Shout out Pathfinders and Street Beat. Because if it had not been for them, I wouldn't have had any other resources. I wouldn't have been able to get housing support at all, and I would have been homeless still. But what wasn't working for me was working for other people, and for some reason we think that, oh, that's where the work ends, but like it doesn't. And so all of us have different ideas, and all of us have different resources, skills that we can use to support our community. And it shouldn't be a matter of, oh, this person is over here doing this thing already, so let me just do something completely different. Like, no, we all have a seat at the table. You just need to write your name down, okay?
Definitely. And Dr. Dima, how about you next?
Well, I think I agree with all what was said. Probably because of my background, I want to talk more about educating our youth and focusing on education big time. To build Milwaukee, we don't need to look at today and tomorrow. We need to look about the future 10, 20 years down the road. You're not going to be able to implement any real change if you look at to the tip of your nose. You really have to look further, miles further. And for that, we got to invest more in the children, in the future of the town, in the future of this community. And of course, tackling poverty, making sure no one goes hungry, all of that is fundamental needs, but not far behind is the education of our youth and keeping them in school, not just like lower level school. Make sure there's technical school, colleges, we have a lot in Milwaukee area. We have multiple schools, multiple colleges. Give the opportunity to every single kid that wants to and is motivated. And those who are not motivated, make sure that we motivate them, because to build future of any country, any community, you have to rely on those who are going to become our future, our children. Focus more on the youth.
Definitely. And Dominique?
So I also agree with what everyone shared, but think I would just go a layer above that. So I think I'm going to cheat a little bit and say my two main issues are segregation and scarcity mindset. So the segregation, I think, is what prevents us from, is a large part of what prevents us from connecting in a way so we can understand each other's experiences. And I think without that, then if I'm not homeless, I'm not caring about that. If I'm not, my kid isn't in a crappy school, I don't care about that. If I don't have these challenges in my life, then I am unable to connect with the issue because I don't know anybody, right, that's facing these issues. But I think that the more that we address the segregation issue and start to have some overlap in how we live and how we socialize and how we think about these things, there are different perspectives introduced, then that creates a pathway for people to have a more empathetic approach to people's challenges in this city. I think without that, it's really easy to live in a bubble and pretend like these things just aren't happening. So that's kind of my first one. And you know, Dr. Mark Levine from UWM, who did a study early, 2020 kind of threw me off earlier this year, last year, 2 years. And found that segregation was really the number one indicator around whether or not specifically Black people in the city were prospering or not. And so, you know, you look across all these indicators and you think it's going to be education, or you think it's going to be, you know, kind of these basic human rights type needs, but it's not. It's like you have to kind of peel under that and see what's causing the disparities in those things. And then my second issue would definitely be scarcity mindset. So there is this idea that I think is so prevalent in Milwaukee that there's not enough resources, there's not enough this, there's not enough that, there's not enough talent, there's not enough money, there's not enough. And that puts people in the place where they're always competing instead of collaborating. So when I hear people talking about a holistic approach, and when I hear people talking about looking in the future and 10 years out, I start thinking about like, how are we actually building a muscle to collaborate instead of compete in order to do this work, because the way in which we're doing it now, we can't get to the future we imagine. Like, it's impossible to do the work how we're doing it right now and get to what we imagine the city can be. And so how do we start to think about how we ourselves as individuals, our individuals and organizations, actually approach this work differently? The work is too big for an individual or an organization or even a handful of organizations. We have to rethink our approach to how we face the challenges in this city.
Definitely, definitely. And Kara, I'd like to hear from you next.
It's hard to be toward the end of this question because it's just ditto, ditto, ditto. I definitely want to sort of like underscore the notion of like shifting the mentality from, scarcity to abundance and finding ways to collaborate that are not carrying a baton, but really having trust and those baton passes to say like, hey, we know how to show films. You know how to get the right people in that room to then have a conversation afterward, to then go back to their school. And so like, what are those moments where we can kind of trust in one another to sort of do our best work? I also want to just like bump up in the education conversation, supporting educators to do their best work, to find ways to individualize education, to do things that aren't just what the curriculum and the tests think is learning, but to really get in there and do the kind of learning that will create those 21st century citizens that we need. As 2020 has shown us, we need critical thinkers, and everyone can be a critical thinker. So I'll stop there, but all of this, I won't add to the list. I'm just gonna underline the entire list.
And yeah, Shalina, I guess that leaves you last. The end of the list, as it were.
Well, all right. I heard economics, facts. Access to resources, facts. Education, absolutely. Segregation is an issue. Our city was designed that way. Scarcity mindset, our city was designed that way. Result of fucking segregation. I'm sorry, mouth check. This gets me so excited. The need to collaborate, supporting educators, shop local. Shout out to Circulate MKE. The question within itself is part of the mind frame and thinking. We need all this. We can't choose it. And every single one of these has a root in racism. And we need to be able to talk bluntly and very particularly about this, that our city was designed to uphold white supremacy. We're in a state designed to it. You have pockets of folks of color, and then we are pitted against each other so that we maintain the sense of division that keeps white supremacy as a majority. So when our city starts to talk in the way that it is, and we stop talking around all this stuff, because Milwaukee, Wisconsin has been the battlegrounds and the political playground for so many different things historically, that people really in our country watch us in the political realm, because there are all kinds of programs that come out of Wisconsin and they start and they end here. And we are, we're in a test constantly. And so the people who are here are constantly living in a deficit, because people are figuring out what works when it comes to suppressing communities. And that's real. And there's a lot of documentation. And so I think, and this does lead to collaboration, that when we can all be real about our history and how we got here, and we can talk about how racism in the early constructs has impacted our economics, our education, our segregation, our scarcity mindset, and all that. And then we give each one of those places a space to consider, like, how do we address this, and how do we include the community voice versus sitting outside the community and then trying to make decisions for them. So we have 19,000 nonprofits in Wisconsin, 19,000, and I will not vote on one of them. But what does happen is we try to, and not me, But a lot of people on a public platform try to be like, hey, just look at this real quick. And then let's just stick to this narrative. And then we can ignore this one. And then we can pit agendas against each other so that in the long run, you know, we're just not seeing that holistic result. So what I am going to say is, when you cannot love the world you're in, then love the world that you create. So each of us have the awesome opportunity to at least have that realistic, holistic mindset where we are true and present in our work, and just hope that we can really support our next generation after us to exist and live and function from that mindset until that becomes the norm. And then folks like us just got to keep being present and having these conversations in real ways that get a little uncomfortable, because we are uncomfortable every day in our regular lives. Okay.
Well, I think I'd actually like to start off the question with you, Shalina, because all of you, but especially you, have already touched on the question that's coming next, and that's, well, the elephant in the room, as it were, the segregation, which is about as schizophrenic as the city. The segregation is about as schizophrenic as the state itself. For example, while Senator McCarthy, who led the communist witch hunts, as they're called, is from here, but so is Gaylord Nelson, the founder of Earth Day and an active conservationist. So I want to ask each of you, into the more personal side of all this, of all the politics that affect our daily lives. How does the city's segregation affect your daily life personally? Shalina, can we hear from you next?
Sure.
First, I suppose. Not just your work, but your daily life.
I feel like I should say that the Black Panthers brought the free lunch program and meal program here as well. And it started in Wisconsin, and then it went all over the world for public schools to have free meals.
That started in Wisconsin?
Yes, it did.
I know the Black Panthers were the first to do that, but I had no idea it started in Wisconsin. Wow.
Started here.
So, wait. Oh, sorry. I forgot. Elle didn't answer the last question. I'm so sorry, Elle. That's what happens when I'm so sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Go. You can finish your thoughts, Shalina, and then I'll circle back around.
Thank you, Elle. So on that note, you're right. There's tons of great things that have come out of Wisconsin and great experiences. And so I'm going to sum that up by saying I experience them every day. So my conversations, my work, my lived experiences don't come from a deficit. I see beauty in my community all the time. There's music, there's laughter, there's food, there's a lot to celebrate. One of the things that I think that most of us do is we see and we experience and we love the glory that is deep rooted in our community. And that's why we fight for it so hard. So my daily life is not, it doesn't come from a deficit. I'm really proud of my community, and I'm proud of the young people I serve, and I believe in them. And my daughter, I just cannot wait to see how her life unfolds as she becomes an adult. She's knocking on the door right now. And, you know, I think that I'm
awesome. And Elle, once again, I'm so sorry for that, but yes, can you please, main areas where Milwaukee needs to prioritize implementing change, and how does the city's segregation affect you personally?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely connecting this question and that previous question, and echoing things that were shared. That it is a history of redlining. The redlining affected our state in the 2016 national election. The redlining affected our state in the 2020 national election as well. And it's like literally like physical redlining to where we are all in this highly densely populated city in Milwaukee and Racine and Kenosha, the people of color, and Madison, the people of color, but in all the surrounding areas, those electoral votes and those political representations that they have based off of infiltrating those other area codes and those other zip codes inside of Wisconsin is a part of like what impacts our state legislature and all of our politics and the policies that affect us on the ground. And it is something that needs like specific people to get their hands dirty and to, you know what I mean, get them even dirtier than our people that we know that are active on that side of the movement every day. I definitely wanted to uplift again the idea that working out of a deficit-based mindset is also a part of the patriarchy, also a part of Western civilization, Westernization, colonization, and it's based in whiteness. In ancient civilizations, they knew that they were born with the tools. They knew that they were born with the capabilities, with the skills, and that those things could be acquired with dedication, with hard work, with learning, with being open to learning. And I think no matter your background or no matter your stage, and especially if you are involved in serving community, I think it's most important that we all self-educate ourselves, and that's the active part of you being a visible advocate, and making sure that you're growing and changing and adjusting with the times and with the language and terminology and respecting people, and working outside of that silo mentality. The silo mentality is something that I've noticed in our Milwaukee culture since I was like a youth worker, since I was like in high school, having my first experiences with our nonprofit structure. I was Youth of the Year in Mary Ryan Boys and Girls Club. I've been a Sherman Park resident for many, many years, and my family for many years. And it was something I noticed then. Like, just in that network, we can't get all the clubs to connect. You know what I'm saying? So how would 19,000 nonprofits and school systems and all these different types of systems be able to connect? And I think that social media and where we're at now in our conversations, I think that we're definitely in a place to start changing that. And that there's no one upholding that but us. I like to say about the patriarchy, like, they don't have to have their finger on the button of holding us from talking to each other if we just not gonna talk to each other because of politics or because of race or because of gender or because of class or you know what I mean, or sexual identity or gender identity and stuff. So all of those things. But the future is Black. The future is brown. The future is Black and brown people being the majority. The future is women. The future is women leading. The future is women like me being visible and being called women and counted amongst our peers. The future is queer and trans. And y'all gonna have to get used to it or y'all gonna lose your job. And I say all that to say is like Shalena mentioned, is we do have the power to manifest things into our reality, both positive and negative. And a lot of what we manifest and continue to be ensnared by in our like generational process, kind of like Dr. Dima mentioned, is like in Public Allies, there's this saying called there's this principle which is adopted from Native American ideology called the 7-generation rule, and that we need to move now, like we're moving with the purposeful mind intent of these movements having an impact on our people 7 generations from now. And how do we make sure that 7 generations from now we're not in the same place and having the same conversations that we're having now? And a lot of that, like I said, the future is, and what the future is allowing us to step into that, not gatekeeping that, not blocking the way for that, and being open to new ideas, new collaboration, being open to involving youth and diversifying your boards and diversifying your staff, for organizations, for your staff and for your service providers to look like the people that they're serving. And for you to do that extra mile and that due diligence to find those people, to hire them, to invest in them. And Ania was over here making me emotional. I get emotional over everything. I really literally started crying, Ania, because you know what I mean. Ania and myself are young ladies, you know what I'm saying, and it's hard, you know. And I'm a young Black trans woman, and for me and Ania, just you know what I mean, amongst everyone on this wonderful panel that is tirelessly working and dedicated and everything all year round to whatever cause it is that we are connected with. For me to have the visibility that I have, and for Ania to have the impact on people that she has had, and on the work that she has had in connection building, and for us not to be able to pay our bills, for our male counterparts to make $40,000 more than us to have health insurance, like, you know, there's not an equity in that. There's not a level playing field in that. There's not a moving forward in that, because it's a dead system. It's a system and a practice that doesn't work. And so we have to, again, like Solana said, my good sister Solana, build those new systems, and not feed into the patterns of the old ones. And we also need to do things that are new, like getting out of the way.
Yep, sadly, I've had to kind of learn to listen more. And that's partially why I set up the film festival, to promote work like this, art like this. So yes, thank you. And Dr. Dima, I'd like to take the question to you next. How does the segregation of the city affect you personally, like your daily life?
I agree with what's said so far. And of course, segregation of Milwaukee, something was said initially. This is how the city was built. This was meant to be this way. And sometimes you can keep fighting to change, and sometimes you can do the best out of what's existing. So, okay, zip codes are labeled, fine. Let's cross the line of the zip words. Outreach programs, open dialogue, discussion, engaging the children or the youth with Boys and Girls Club from all zip codes, all communities. We might not be able to change the zip code labeling at this point right away, right now, but let's do what we can to change the outcome of this right now. We don't have to wait for Milwaukee democracy to change. We don't have to wait for, or we might not have time to change the zip code labels that we have right now, but we can make change with what we have right now. The existing situation doesn't have to stay as bad as it is. We can do the outreach programs. I love Milwaukee, the Open Doors Milwaukee program. I love those open dialogue that we have interracial, religious, all that stuff. All these dialogue, they're involve more of the community in them, not just the leader of the faith or the leader of the community. No, every single person in this community need to be able to get involved in this outreach programs, in these open dialogue discussion, open the community, not by zip code specifically. We can all meet downtown and have the exact same dance festival we were talking about earlier. It doesn't have to be zip code related. Let's label this whole area, the big Milwaukee area, and all the children of Milwaukee can be the children of every single of the mothers on this panel, and in every single mother that's sitting home. Whatever color, whatever religion, whatever background you have, the youth of this community is our future. Let's all give them the love, share everything between each other, starting with dialogue, starting with discussion, outreach programs. We're not going to change things right away, but we don't have to stay as is, because that's unacceptable.
Definitely. And Ania, I think I'd like to hear from you next.
Yes, could you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, no worries. How does segregation affect you in your daily life? Because we've talked a lot about the big political. I'd love to hear you guys share personal stories.
Yeah. So I think that for me, the biggest would be like, I'm 26 now. I always, like, just because of the way my brain works, sometimes I like wake up and I just like start reflecting on like just like the past like 10 years of my life. And so like 10 years back, that's like 16, right? And 16, I was a sophomore at West Dallas Nathan Hale High School. if y'all was paying attention to our campaign that the previous president ran, he came to Milwaukee, West Dallas, and went to, you guessed it, my school. I was actually invited. So that was the environment that I had growing up in high school in West Dallas. And so I was raised on the east side of Milwaukee off of Holton Street, borderline that segregation that I feel like Holton is kind of a segregation line, because on one side it's River West, on the other side, it's the ghetto, it's the hood. And I lived on both sides of that street. And then I also grew up, like I said, in West Dallas, where at the time my mom needed to live there so that she could get to work in Madison and be able to get back to Milwaukee in time, be able to, make sure that me and my brother were fed and all that good stuff. But like that I used to be walking and on the bus from the east side all the way to West Dallas, just to make sure that my mom, had access to this network that was out there in West Dallas. Like that was literally what it came down to, was just like making sure that my mom had resources so she could get to work, so she could provide for us. And then eventually it came to, well, let's all just move to West Dallas because it'll make it easier. And then I don't have to be on the bus 2 hours every day to get to school. Because then I'm on a certain level, I'm unsafe. And so it turned into that. And then eventually when I got out of sophomore and I entered junior year, it was like really frustrating process. It was so hard to navigate, because that's when I experienced a lot of racism, and I like very straightforward racism, not like Kiki, we playing with you, but on the side we talk about you type of thing, but like in your face, we're calling you the N-word and all type of stuff like that. Like it got to that point, and for me, it only got to that point because there's not a lot of Black people. There weren't a lot of Black people in that school at the time. The perception of Milwaukee inner schools compared to outer schools is completely different. And when you look at the school, the actual school, the education and the resources that they provide to their students at West Dallas, Nathan Hale, compared to all of these other schools that I had been in, I was in a high school for my freshman year when I was still living on the east side, and that school was shut down probably 6 months after I transferred. They graduated all of the kids in junior and senior year, even though the juniors still had time to go. And to me, that really reflected how messed up our education system is. I can get access to theater and all of these great programs. I'm in the theater class, and I'm in these theater productions. I'm in art class, and there are different types of art classes, and I have like at least 2 different art teachers, and I have study time, and I have this and I have that. And then what do I have at this other school? I had 4 blocks periods and 4 teachers, and my French teacher was also my English teacher and my art teacher, and all of these different things that just added up. And that's only something that you see when you have a little segregation line in between. Oh, these are the good schools, this is the good neighborhood, and oh, these are the bad schools, this is the bad neighborhood, this is the bad community members. They're not invested in their community, they're not invested in their education. Oh, they're putting in all of this work into the school and this and that, when it's just like both of these communities are not given the same opportunities. And that's really what it boils down to.
Thank you for that. Kara, I'd like to hear about how segregation affects your life.
I'm going to take a sort of a sideways way into this question. So I am not from Wisconsin originally. I moved here in 2002 for grad school from Seattle. And upon moving here, first I thought sight unseen, I didn't know Milwaukee was going to be nearly the city that it is. I assumed there would be cows. I was very wrong in what I thought was going to happen. But once I got here, one of the things that it inspires me through discomfort about the city is that in a city like Seattle, the segregation is there, but it is really, really hidden. It is not talked about. It is not addressed. And that in our city, we talk about it on every panel, gives me some, like, at least that this is something we are talking about, we are addressing, we are wanting to find ways to reallocate, to create difference. But it is something that inspires me in our city, not because I'm excited about it, but because it seems like something we can work together on, that we are already talking about. Now, are we talking for too long without making change? I mean, some might say that, but how do we move at the speed of trust to really do small things to make bigger changes? That 7 generations thing, I love that, of how do we sort of set up for that 7th generation.
Mm-hmm. And Dominique, how does segregation affect your daily life?
It's so interesting because I actually asked this question during the Belonging Project, the project where I interviewed 72 people about segregation. And people of color, and that has in large part borne out here, were really clear about how segregation impacts their life. And the white people I interviewed did not feel a direct, or could not articulate a direct impact on their lives as a result of segregation. So they recognized that it was a problem for the city. They recognized that it was a challenge that we should deal with, but really were challenged to identify, like, how does this impact my day-to-day life, right? And I think there is a huge difference there, because the effects are borne out, at least we think they are, primarily on people of color, but I would argue that white people in this city are also impacted by segregation, in that it robs us of the ability to connect and create from those connections, right? So we have this deficit of amazing things that could be happening by just the cross way that when people of different perspectives, different races, when they interact, what's born out of that. So that aside, how segregation impacts my life, I'm also not from Milwaukee, and I have yet to completely succumb to segregation in this city. And so so it impacts my life in that my life then becomes segmented. So I refuse to let segregation tell me where I should be in the city or who I should be with. And so what I find myself doing is existing in all of these different spaces and places with all of these different people. And those spaces and places and people aren't connected. And so then I'm living my life inside of those segments. So now I'm here at the University Club. Now I'm over here at the Post Falcon. Now I'm over here on the north side. Now I'm over here on the south side. Now, and those worlds don't connect. And so I think when I think about how segregation impacts me personally, it is just that. It's that it makes my life more fragmented and disconnected. And it makes me sad for the possibilities that we've been robbed of.
Definitely. Solana, yeah, I believe, unless I've skipped anyone again. Sorry. Go ahead.
So I think personally, I think it's still going to be a systematic in a way, because for me right now is the job market. I'm trying not to leave Milwaukee. I'm trying not to try to go somewhere else, right? But the jobs that are here for a lot of different things are, one, lowballed. They're not, they don't pay a lot for a lot of things. Kind of what Elle was talking about, the positions for the work that a lot of us have been doing for years. White men get that position and they hardly got any kind of experience doing anything and they get paid well. Then it's oh, but you can have this position, this little position right here, and it pays nothing, hardly anything. And it's not like it's not happening a lot of places, but it's happening a lot here in Milwaukee. There's just not that many jobs because segregation basically had it that people moved move their jobs to the outskirts. I don't currently have I would say segregation probably, if I say really deep down, it'd be like, I don't have a car, right? And so we have a bus transit system that has been impacted by segregation and segregation policies, because every time someone tries to expand the bus system or try to do it in different types of ways, people will say, no, we don't want it to go here, we don't want it to go there, and it's usually because of racist policies. The same with the money that goes to the county for the bus system and stuff, and for whatever it's doing, because the state is racist and they think of Milwaukee a certain way. We don't have good relationship, that we don't get good shared revenues, good shared revenue deal with the state, right? So then the bus system is not good, and other services are not good, right? So there's all these different things that have to do with it. But I would say, like, I liked what I'm sorry if I missay your name, but you're saying about white people in the spaces. I think one of the biggest things is a lot of these things are influenced by racism. A lot of these things are influenced by white people in places of power. And so if white people are segregated from the problem, the people, and the idea, then what will happen? They don't know. And then they don't have to necessarily study it or talk about people of color, LGBT people, Black people, Native people, LGBT people at all in their studies. So then what does it do? We have an uphill climb to try to educate someone in these things if they have no exposure to it. So you have white people.
Nothing that could make people remotely uncomfortable. White people remotely uncomfortable.
And they wouldn't even be uncomfortable. If they were raised in it, they wouldn't be uncomfortable because they would know. And so it's about exposure of white people. White people don't get the exposure they need, and then they go into places of power in all levels of government in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in jobs, in being supervisors, being trainers, being executive directors, and they are in charge of multiple people of color without any kind of real experience, or police officers, and they don't have any real experience with people of color. And we are not keeping them accountable to that, or are we keeping these companies accountable to making sure that their people are culturally competent? And so I think segregation, that's like one of the biggest things, is we're always going to receive an impact of segregation because we are not dealing with the fact that it influences power players at play. And that's not just, to white people, but it's also, there's not a lot of people that have been dealing with poverty in places of power either. And so they don't even know how to deal when someone gets homeless or something happens at home. You have teachers and stuff that don't even treat their students well because they don't understand poverty or even try. So there's a lot of segregation in multiple different levels, not just Black and white, but economically as well.
Definitely. And yeah, it's already been an hour, so I accept that we're going to go over. So I want to only ask all of you two last questions so we don't go over too much. And Solana, since you went last, I want to kick this question off with you. There's a lot of people that identify as artists and activists in Milwaukee trying to make the problem better. There's a lot of people that don't. So how do you think people that just don't identify, you say, I'm not an artist, activist, etc., how do you think they can be a part of positive change?
I think it's about educating themselves. I mean, anybody who has access to internet, to the library, can educate themselves on what's going on and the impacts of it. A good book is Color of Law. That can really say about how different policies have negatively impacted people. Another one is there's a show on Netflix right now called Amend with Will Smith. It really kind of breaks down
AMEND? Amend?
Like amend the Constitution. And so it talks about the 14th Amendment and then a lot of the other constitutional changes and how it impacted. And those two things can kind of give you a set of like how policy has impacted everybody's everyday lives. I think that's one thing, is education. The other thing is that you can figure out how your job can be better. Look at their policies, see where their holes, advocate for people, especially if you have privilege in a space, advocate for your organization or your hiring practices to be in a more of an anti-racist lens, to be a more equitable lens. You can, just hold your friends and stuff accountable. and just make sure that you're not saying stupid jokes, or, just there's a lot of little things that people can do, but especially people in power, they need to educate themselves and make sure to go and talk to people who have lived experiences.
Definitely. Kara, your thoughts on how like people don't consider themselves activists and such can be a part of positive change?
Well, yeah, like as Solana was saying, like take time, listen, learn, read, all that, of course. I'm also going to scoop Shalina and say, shop locally, try to use your dollar power. I mean, we've said capitalism is a problem structurally here, but how can we use what within that system? What can we do to kind of enact change, whether that's shopping locally, paying artists, whether you're asking artists to do work or whether you have an opportunity to, give them money for, a piece of art, making sure that they're getting to tell stories that are diverse, different, new, fresh, interesting, confusing, all that are pieces of it. And then, vote when you are able to vote in elections, particularly, I think, and taking the time to do that, reading and learning and thinking even about those, school boards, they matter. How do we get change in some of these structures where we have to find people who are going to make that change?
And Dr. Dima, your thoughts?
I guess if you're not going to be part of the positive change, don't stay in the way of it, and definitely don't make effort to make a negative change. People listen. People sometimes are not educated enough to differentiate smart talk from BS. So basically, if you're not going to be positive, do not be negative. And more importantly, do not stop in the way of the positive change. In our religion, there's a saying for the prophet, if you see something wrong, you have to change it. It's your duty as a human being to change it. If you can't change it by your hand, change it with your word. If you can't change it by your word, change it with your heart. At least make prayers to change it. The positive change comes from education. People do not want to change because of ignorance that builds in fear. And then that brings in, leave things as is. I'm comfortable in my little box. I don't want to even allow anyone in it, or get out of it, or even hold hands with a person in the next box. So education, education, education. If you're not part of the positive change, at least stay out of it. Don't cause damage. Do no harm.
Shalina, your thoughts?
Okay, I'm in. First of all, I do got to backtrack. I'm not saying that the grassroots version of the free meal program started here. I'm talking about a municipal and policy aspect, and I'll leave that there.
Okay.
So I think that it's okay to just get involved with us. I think that also, especially at a time right now, I hear people oftentimes feel pressure, like if they're just doing a 9 to 5, or everybody feels like they're not doing enough if they really care. But I think that getting attached to different organizations who are doing great work, getting behind them and supporting them is magnificent, and it's important. So, I think there's a lot of things in place and a lot of opportunities in place for people to get involved and be impactful. And so, just get involved, research us. We usually have, and when I say us, I mean all of us, Elle was promoting a march, the Black Trans Visibility March. You can just show up, and you can also invest in the things that we're doing, and then check your bias. Like, do you deeply really believe that all of us deserve to be well and be whole and be healthy and be okay? So I think some of that is more than enough. Help us out, lighten our load, be involved.
Thank you. And on that note, Elle, are you there? Do you think you could answer Elle?
Yes, I have to move
Oh,
around, but I'm
you can
here.
ask someone else
Thank you.
if you need a minute.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Shalina, for that shout out again for the Black Trans Visibility Celebration March and our week of events. I really appreciate that. I just want to say that how we can contribute to moving forward um, is one, us as women, as cis and trans women, as Black women. Um, we have to let go of our side of the relationship with the endurance principle of like we supposed to take every hit and we supposed to do everything and be able to conquer and handle every situation and we don't need no help and whatever isn't fair or just or equitable to us, well, that's just a part of the game and that's just this and that's just that. I really echo what Dr. Dima said. I always tell people if you can see like that injustice and that inequity, you have the power to do something about it. And you know what I'm saying? You're supposed to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, y'all ever seen like that image of Atlas from like Greek mythology with the whole world on his back? Well, that's
Mm-hmm.
all of us in this Zoom or in this StreamYard. And we do that every day and we balance that every day. And so I would like to encourage our co-conspirators and our allies and our families and our friends and the people that uplift us on a daily basis to, again, get out of the way and to also help us reach that future and that full potential by unlocking our real potential. We so busy holding up the whole world on our back that even what we able to give y'all in the capacity that we are able to serve now, that's only half of all of our real capacity. That's only half of who we really are. That's only with half of us and half of our foot in the door. And so just imagine how just with changing that tide for women, how different things can look in our next chapters.
Definitely. Thank you. And Dominique?
So I would share these recommendations in the context of the work I do, which is around racial equity and inclusion. So there's a lot of different ways you can have impact. I think these and the recommendations that everyone is sharing is kind of in the context of the work they do in Milwaukee. But the first thing is to just get out of your bubble. And so Shalina talked about like, come over to True School, and that's Black and brown people, that's white people, that's all the people. Like, you live in a bubble, get out of your bubble. Like every individual has to make their own commitment to do that if we're going to start to shift some of this. The second thing, and this is echoing what everyone else shared, is really around education. I am never cease to be surprised by how many people just don't know kind of these basic things around our history and how the city and country have unfolded. But if we know that these things have been hidden, right? They were hidden from us, right? They were hidden inside it. They weren't available inside of our education system. And so it should be no surprise that people don't really have access to this knowledge and information. The YWCA's Unlearning Racism class, Reggie Jackson and Fran Kaplan over at Nurturing Diversity, Monique Liston at Ubuntu. There are a bunch of resources in our community that can help you educate yourself. And then finally, it really is to have courage. So the one thing that I've seen, at least in the work that I do, is that folks are going to get knocked down a bit, right? And what I've seen is that, you know, in the context of especially diversity and inclusion work, there's a lot of shame and guilt wrapped up in that. And so sometimes it's difficult to process this information and engage in the work. And it really does admittedly take a lot of courage to like take the hit, feel it, right? I acknowledge that it's a real feeling and get back up and kind of keep standing and moving forward. And so that would be my final recommendation, is to just have the courage to get back up again, because this work is that important.
Definitely, definitely. And Ania?
All right. So I would say something that's been heavily on my mind lately is like two things. Elitism and our youth. Elitism as in like just like we need to shed the zip codes and shed the racial the racial boundaries or whatever we want to call them. We also need to shed the titles, shed the acclamations, and meet people where they at, because our academics could get in the way of connecting with people. As well as can alienate people. In my experience, now that I've like been taken down a couple of notches, been homeless and been through the trenches a little bit more, like I'm humbled a little bit more. And now I realize like some of the things that I say and the way that I innately talk, just because I've been a nonprofit majority of my life, it alienates a lot of people that I need to work with. The people who are experiencing a lot more housing insecurity. That's not the nonprofit people, that's for sure. Like, so I need to, for lack of better words, I need to bring my language, meet them where they at with my language just as much as my presence. And then two, youth, because as of right now, we're talking about education, but we also need to talk about the youth and how a lot of the youth are committing suicide and they really going through it, especially because it's not easy being in Zooms all day. It's not easy being at home with your family, especially if they super toxic and they not supportive of you and your identity. And my heart goes out to every young person that this feed comes across, that is really holding it down at home and trying to like still be a child while also navigating Corona and all this other stuff. I know that is not easy, and my heart goes out to y'all. And it also goes out to the parents as well as y'all navigate this space. And I hope that the experiences become healthy and enlightening and positive, because we are not having enough conversations with our youth. We are not having enough conversations about our personal experiences and histories with our city, with our family members, with everything. Like everything needs to be laid out in the open. We got time. We might be in quarantine. You never know, we got enough time to sit down and have conversations, to be genuine with our youth about the state of our society, as well as the state of our own mental health as individuals. Because it's super prevalent. And it hits home for me. And I mention it now because I also had a family member who attempted recently, and it really hits home. It really hits home. And so please, if you have the chance, have a conversation with a young person, and not just in I'm an older person, I'm more mature, this and that, but no, as a humbled being coming to another being. Like, we both ants in here. We both ants. And I'm just talking to you as an ant. I'm not talking to you as the queen ant. I'm literally just talking to you as a worker ant at this point. Yeah, humble thyself for sure.
Thank you. And that brings me to the last question. We've gone like 18 minutes over, but I want to hear from you all about this last question. And Ania, I'd like to start with you since you went last. What brings you joy, whether through your work and in your personal life?
Joy. What brings me joy? Okay. So many things that bring me joy. Okay. So seeing my community like geeked and proud, and Juneteenth Day, that'd be snapping. I really miss the big festivals where we're all just immersed in our culture and super like joyful and unapologetic. That brings me joy.
Same. And Solana?
I'm
Sorry, do you mind
writing at the same time? I would say, festivals is definitely. Anybody who knows Summerfest, I was usually there every day. This is the quarantine probably made me realize that I like people, but I don't think I like people as much as I thought. And so remote is starting to look good right about now. Even though I was definitely a people person. I would say professionally, or not professionally, but just stuff I do other than like video games and festivals and dressing up for Halloween. Educating people on like how to change their communities, definitely one thing that I it took me a while of not doing it to realize how much it brought me joy. Like, because I used to be a youth organizer and I used to do workshops and stuff, and just I don't want to say empowering because that they already have power, but just giving them the resources and tools and telling them, showing them what's all going on so that they can harness the power and really go forward with it. That's definitely something that brings me joy. Other than I like cosplaying, and I like I used to be a haunt actor at haunted houses for like 10 years. I like scaring the crap out of people in costume.
Awesome.
Because it's something that's really like for real, like it's something outside of you can be whatever you want. And I think it still goes to what we have like I realized later that it comes with trying to be yourself and everything like that, is that when you completely get rid of what society thinks you should be in the positions I was doing, it really made me look at how people were looking at me and how I was looking at myself and how everything. So I kind of really like doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Halloween's my favorite, so miss that too. Dominique?
So I get joy from creating. I love to create, and I love to support. And like Solana said, people have power, but I love to support and watch people come into their full power. Like, I love to see the process of people growing more confident and getting more comfortable in their skin, and like supporting folks' journey around that. And then just like watching how they like light the world on fire, right? That definitely brings me a lot of joy. And my family. I love my family.
Thank you. And Elle, how about you?
Pro-Black femme spaces give me joy. Beautiful Black and brown women give me joy. Walking in my path and knowing that I'm where God has placed and called for me to be in this season is something that brings me personally joy. Just connecting and seeing all the faces that you all don't get to see all year, except for Pride Fest or the UWM drag show, or the opportunities when our whole community can be out together. Just seeing those faces and like Miss Dominique just said, just seeing people's growth, people that I've supported, people that I just have been a witness in their journey, and being able to be comfortable with the times that you have your own visibility, right? With the times that you have visibility for the sake of community and what we're trying to do for other people. And then for those times when you're just a witness or you're just a part of someone else's story and someone else's journey, all bring me joy. And I think from our like summer movement and what we're going into the next summer with that energy of our movement, I think just seeing like the kids, just seeing people literally having on their faces Black joy gives me joy. And just us instilling that and revitalizing that and making space for that in 2021 and in the future, and just bringing that back to our communities and bringing Black pride and again that we are created and based and we exist out of abundance, and just seeing other people connected to me or not be able to embrace that for themselves gives me joy too.
Thank you. And Kara?
I feel like several people have pointed to this, but getting to spend time with the youth who are currently in our programs virtually, which is awkward and strange, but to see their voices come out and be heard and put on screen. But a plug that in the festival, our teen screen program is coming back, which is a section that is programmed by teens collaboratively, and they are saying all the things that I hope that film programmers will be saying and wanting to see on screen. Same with our filmmaking. We have a high school filmmaking course. I'm very excited to see them tell their stories and put them on screen for the city and the world to see. And then like cats, you just saw Henry. My cats give me joy every day. There's, I think in the last year, we've all become really aware of the way that touch, human or human non-human, is important for us. And so I would be remiss to not acknowledge the cats who fulfill that. And like good food, right? Like, I mean, the thing I miss is these sort of moments of sharing food with others, and in, cultural festivals, as well as, very small kind of one-on-one settings. But that act of sharing food with others is one of the things that I think can help us re-ritualize community.
Definitely. Thank you. And Dr. Dima, you're just going to have the last word. So, no pressure. We're all just looking at you
No
now.
pressure. So my two little girls, watching them grow gives my heart bouncing. And what puts a big smile on my face, as everyone who knows me know, is chocolate.
Yep, same. I think I got like 3 different kinds in my house now, at least. So yes, thank you. Okay, and I think that's a wrap. I want to thank you all again for joining me, for your patience, for bearing with me, even though we went so far over. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Once again, thank you for joining.
Great
Thank you.
evening.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, ladies.
Nice to meet you all, yes.